Good afternoon, Dreyfus. We have been observing Holocaust Education Week on campus, and I would like to thank our outstanding Social Studies Department for everything they do as they go above and beyond to provide engaging and enriching lessons to our students. I would also like to thank our phenomenal Dean of the Social Studies Department, Mrs. Sarah Stout, for everything she does for us daily and for providing this opportunity for us. Before we bring up our speaker, I would like to bring up a special guest from Next Generations. Her name is Randy Posner. Let's give it up for Ms. Posner.
Good afternoon. How are you guys? Everybody all right? Comfortable? Relaxed? All right, it's been a while since I've been up in front of a high school audience. Most of the work that I do with Next Generations are with the younger kids, probably the age of your sisters, brothers, maybe cousins. But Next Generations was created back in 2004 by children of Holocaust survivors. How many of you know a Holocaust survivor? Excellent. Have you ever asked them about their experience? Our responsibility is to take the lessons of the Holocaust and apply them to your world today. Many of the things that happened during that one of the darkest periods has given us insight as to what human nature can do for better and for worse. And so we're here today to share with you the insight and the lessons that Dr. Tenenbaum has had growing up as the child of survivors, telling us about his experience and about the trauma that his parents had to go through. And we hope at the end of the session that you will have some questions for him, for me. I'm a retired teacher. I taught the Holocaust for 25 years, and I have learned the most important thing that we can bring to our world today is patience and understanding and respect. And Dr. T, if you're ready, come on up here and let's give him a warm welcome.
Sorry, there was one-way traffic on the stairs. I want to thank you for having me here today. It is a pleasure to be here at Dreyfus with so many talented and bright students. I call this From the Ashes. It's a personal account of the Holocaust in Poland, where my parents lived. This is one of my fun quotes. Joseph Stalin said, "One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic." The estimates of those killed in World War II are somewhere between 60 and 80 million people, including at least 6 million Jewish men, women, and children. And my purpose here is to put a human face on that statistic. Poland, 1939. The population of Poland, over 3 million, 35 million. Jewish population of Poland, about 3%, 9%. Largest, the second largest Jewish population in the world, and the largest Jewish population in Europe. Jews who were invited to Poland by the King of Poland in 1492 when they were expelled from Spain by the Spanish Inquisition. And there's Poland, caught between the Soviet Union and Germany, two of its historic enemies. And you'll see in 1939, they split Poland up. Germany took half, the Soviet Union took the other half. One of the lessons of the Holocaust is that there's always an us and them. You're either one of us or you're either one of them. Allies versus Axis, North versus South, free world versus communism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But historically, Jews have always been them. Jews were a particular target of hate and atrocities. Hitler went after the Jewish communists, Stalin went after the Jewish capitalists. Many in Germany said that it was the Jews who lost World War I for Germany, and therefore all of the burdens placed on the German nation. And Jews were Untermenschen, subhuman, not to be with the master race. It's a long history of anti-Semitism in Germany and in all of Europe, and for that matter, the United States. Hitler took advantage of the unrest caused by the worldwide economic collapse in 1929, the Great Depression. It was easy. People were in need. He had simple answers for very complex questions. He kept telling people the same lie all the time until they believed it. And he ran on a platform of restored German greatness after the devastating loss in World War I. The Germans wanted a strong leader who would fix things. My mother, circa about 1946. She lived in Warsaw. In September 1939, she went to the Warsaw Ghetto with her husband and my two half-brothers, about 10 and 8 years old. In 1940, or thereabouts, she was transported to Auschwitz. The life expectancy in Auschwitz was 6 months. They would either work you to death or they'd kill you. She had the Auschwitz tattoo on her forearm until the day she died. That tattoo is linked to IBM punch cards, how the Germans kept record of their inmates in Auschwitz. When she was put on a train to Auschwitz, she never saw her husband or her children again. They were murdered either in the ghetto, in transport, or somewhere in Auschwitz, in the men's camp. My mother lost everything, and I mean everything. And just about everyone she ever knew. And only one sister survived, and that was the only one out of 10 siblings and mother and father. Imagine waking up and finding that half of the people, 3/4 of the people that you grew up with and you knew and you were neighbors, and they're gone. Not only are they gone, your house is gone, your possessions are gone, down to your photographs are gone. Everything is gone, including your humanity. She was liberated from Auschwitz in January of 1945. She weighed about 80 pounds. My father, Meyer Auditorium, it's Meyer Tenenbaum. Now you can see where I get my luscious hairline. He lived in a town called Zvolin, which is a town southeast of Warsaw. He was shipped to the Radom ghetto in 1939, and he too lost everything, including his very successful business, his home, his possessions, photographs, everything, everything. None of his 7 siblings survived, not one. He was an inmate in a number of concentration camps. It was fortunate in that they were mostly work camps rather than death camps. By the way, the Germans had about 15,000 detention facilities, ranging from simple jails to prisons to POW camps, to work camps, labor camps, and death camps. And they put a priority on moving prisoners. They would stop troop trains in order to move prisoners' trains. My father, oh, by the way, my father was liberated from Buchenwald by the Americans, but the Americans had to turn over that territory to the Russians because that was in the Russian zone. So when the Americans left, my father left with them. He said he knew the Russians. I want you to particularly note the ages of those people behind the electrified barbed wire. They are younger than you. This was the crude early method of killing. Later, they built the death camps where they killed on an industrial scale. And they did that because they needed a way for the troops, the German troops, not to be stressed so much. They were very nice about it. More children in more camps. 6, 7, 8 years old. After the liberation, my parents went to a displaced persons camp that was set up by the Allies in it's outside of Munich. It was, I'm sorry, I just went hypoglycemic, so I need to, but in that camp, I'm okay. As long as I hold on, I'm fine. We were residents of Landsberg. Landsberg is the prison where Hitler spent a year writing Mein Kampf before they released him. All traces of the camp are gone, but the prison's still there. My father was taught to be a slave laborer machinist by the Nazis. He used to make munitions. And so we got permission to come to the United States because my father went to the consulate in Munich and told him he could make a living and he could support his family if they let him in the United States. And they said, how? And my father said, because the Germans taught me to be a machinist, and a good machinist, because if I wasn't a good machinist, they would have shot me. We left from Bremen, Germany in April of 1949, took a troop transport to the United States. That's me. Yeah, how did that become this? I don't know. We settled in Pittsburgh because that was an industrial town, and my father had a better chance of finding work. We learned new language, new rules, English is not my first language, by the way. We learned how to survive in a new and strange world. I went to public school, I went to university. Thank God they had scholarships then. And I served in the public health service for 30 years. We lived a fairly normal but very different life. And all of us had post-traumatic stress disorder. Studies have shown that it is transmitted genetically across generations. What do we know? What have we learned from the Holocaust? Apparently not a lot. But we know that hate is taught. It's learned. Somebody has to teach you. There's always an us and them, and it's easy to label somebody else as not as good as you are, or not deserving to be somewhere or even to live. When you dehumanize somebody, thank you. When you dehumanize somebody, it helps you see them as not human, as subhuman. And therefore, when you kill, you're not killing a person. It's not always easy to do the right thing, but it's always easy to do the wrong thing. The Nuremberg defense of I was only following orders is the easy way out and not the right thing. Racism, hate, violence are easily instilled and used, and I believe we have a long way to go as a species. I believe the veneer of civilization is extremely thin. Questions. How was this made possible? How did 60 to 80 million people die and well over 6 million Jews? How did this go on with no intervention? We knew, the world knew about this well before. Think about it. Have there been other genocides in history? Anybody name one? I'm sorry? Rwanda, Cambodia, Armenia. Yeah, I'm not going political here, but yes. There were genocides before World War II, and there are genocides after World War II. It doesn't seem like we learn anything ever. Could it happen again? Sure. Don't kid yourself. Could it happen to Jews? Yes. Hispanics? Yes. Asians? Yes. Name a group. It can happen. The Nuremberg trials rejected, and it was a long-standing principle, that I was just following orders is not an acceptable defense. Am I my brother's keeper? What are our moral responsibilities? Can I be religious and still hate, kill other people? A couple of things I want to leave you with before I take questions. In the late 1970s, they were filming some Holocaust programs, and this was in Eastern Europe. I'll leave the country unnamed. And a guy walked up and asked what they were doing, and he was told, and he said, "Oh, I thought this was one of the best quotes I ever saw. Absolutely one of the best quotes. That thing about the Jews again. First, it never happened. And if they don't keep their mouths shut, it'll happen again." Brilliant quote. Martin E. Muller, pastor in Germany, penned this famous poem. First they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak out. And then they came for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't speak out. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out. John Stuart Mill, all that is needed for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Of course, if he was writing it today, it would be for good people to do nothing. That's why we hope in next generations that we become upstanders, not bystanders. And Heinrich Heine said, where they burn books, they will ultimately burn people. Some resources for you. Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, Night by Elie Wiesel, Ordinary Men, The Destruction of European Jewry, Maus. If you're into graphic arts, go look at Maus. Survival in Auschwitz, Hitler's Willing Executioners, and there are tons. Just go to the library, look it up, you'll find enough books to keep you busy reading for years. And if you really want to read something that gets to the root of anti-Semitism, read Constantine's Sword, which is not up here. Okay, time for me to shut up. Somebody will get exercise. I'm okay.
Hi, my name is Samaj Griffin, and I had two questions for you. But my first question was, what is your reaction to the 2018 synagogue shooting?
I'm sorry, to do the...
What's your reaction to the 2018 synagogue shooting at Tree of Life Center?
There have always been, and there continue to be, people who will not tolerate others. And it's very easy for them to act out with fatal consequences, because getting guns in this society is relatively easy. Their hate is focused. Their hate could have well been focused on, their hate could have well been focused on some other group. But anti-Semitism, in my opinion, has only increased in recent years. And it's become acceptable to be anti-Semitic or anti-Asian or anti-Latino or whatever. It's become okay, and it should never be.
Hi, my name is Medstone Plaisir, and I was wondering, did you have PTSD, and how did you deal with it?
I'm sorry, how did I?
Yeah, how did you deal with your PTSD?
Oh. How I dealt with it?
How did you deal with it?
Most of the people that I knew were other children of Holocaust survivors. So for us, it was normal. You know, it's not normal, but for us, it was normal. And it wasn't not a problem, but it was something that we lived with. In those days, you didn't think about therapy or the psychiatrist or whatever. You dealt with it. And we had, and the children of Holocaust survivors, those of us who grew up that way, also had the stress of being the interface between the new land we were in and our parents, because they didn't understand a lot of that stuff. So we had to, we were in the middle. We interceded for them, and it was normal for us. I mean, you know, I'm dealing with it today, 75 years later, but.
Thank you.
See, and I'm lucky I'm standing still. Good.
Hi, I'm Ava. Well, I just have a question. Like, what was it like living in an internationally displaced persons camp?
I don't know. I don't remember. I left the camp when I was 2 years old, so I really don't remember. I have pictures of it, but I don't have really any memories of it. Except I got to tell you about a little bit about the camp. The camp was set up by the Americans in Landsberg. It became an all-Jewish displaced persons camp. And it had about 5,000 people. It had its own government, it had its own theater, it had its own school, it had its own everything. And by 1950, it was gone, all of it, which is probably a good thing.
Hi, my name is Josetta. I was just wondering, what's your response to people who don't believe that the Holocaust, or like they deny that the Holocaust didn't happen?
Well, look, people believe what they want to believe. You can argue facts. No, I'm sorry. You used to be able to argue facts. Now there are alternative facts. But you can't argue belief. People believe what they want to believe, and everything else is not true. And General Eisenhower, who was the general in charge of the European theater, made sure that everything was filmed and everything was documented, because he said, someday in the future, people will deny this happened. And he was right. There are plenty of Holocaust deniers out there. How do I deal with them? Well, a very good friend of mine taught me a very good lesson. It was, to argue with a fool is to be a fool. So you just walk away and sort of shake your head in disbelief, because there's nothing you can do. I wish there was. You can show them photographs, you can show them films. Oh no, that never happened. That's, and as we say today, you can't fix stupid.
Hi, is this on? Okay. Hi, I'm Emily Lingenfelder, and I was wondering if there's any lesson your mom has taught you that's really stuck with you, or your dad.
I'm sorry.
Is there any lesson your mom or dad has taught you that's really stuck with you?
Yeah. I think the biggest lesson I learned from my parents is a couple lessons. One is that you have to take a chance. I mean, they left everything they knew. Everything they knew was destroyed, and they needed to start over somewhere, and they came to the United States, where my father was fluent in 7 languages because he did business in Eastern Europe. And you had to deal with people from different countries. But he didn't know English. My mother didn't know English. My mother learned English from watching the soap operas. My father went to night school. Yeah, so you got to take a chance, number one, and you got to do what you think is best for you, and he did what he thought was best for him and his family. And the second thing that I really learned from them is you got to keep putting your one foot in front of the other. You just have to go on. When I asked them, how did you survive 5 years, 6 years in the camps? You know what their answer was? 2 answers you could get. 1, I don't know. 2, luck. There's a lot of survivor's guilt because they survived and their siblings didn't. But I think the real lesson there is they got up every morning and wanted to live when it was far easier to die. So you get up every morning and you do what you have to do in order to survive.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Cadio, and I had 2 questions. One of them was if you still have some type of anger towards all the things that happened, but if not, how did you overcome the anger?
Okay, you get a discount for 2 questions. First one, no, I never got over the anger because I was robbed. I was robbed. I was robbed of aunts and uncles and cousins that I never knew, never grew up with. I lived with ghosts all my life. And I don't exactly forgive that. Sorry. Other. Any others?
Okay, so my name is Samaj. One of my questions was, do you think the history of the Holocaust will still be as poignant in future years since first-person accounts like yourself of the event are like passing away?
No, because my daughter, for example, does stuff with Holocaust education. But it becomes more difficult as eyewitnesses die. And those of us who were secondhand witnesses eventually will leave too. I think it will become more difficult to sell people on Holocaust education. And one of the things about Holocaust education is it's not just about Jews. It happened to us, but it happened to others. And we're doing this as a major illustration of what happens when bigotry and hatred are allowed to run rampant for everybody.
My second question was, how did your parents teach you their culture after it was erased?
We lived, how do they keep their culture? My father, I don't know how many of you will understand, but my father was yeshiva trained. He went to Orthodox schools, Jewish Orthodox schools, and he kept his faith throughout his experience. When he came out, he still had his faith. Many didn't, by the way. And so there was that. He still had that he held on to. And we lived in neighborhoods where there were other Holocaust survivors. But sometimes he would talk with one or two of them, but they never spoke about the Holocaust. They never spoke about their experiences because it was too painful. Sometimes my father would find it, one of his friends that they were in the same camp at the same time, and the only thing they'd talk about was, remember that time we found a piece of chalk and we wrote those things about Hitler on the outhouse wall and the SS went crazy trying to find out who did it? Boy, was that fun. Too painful. Lost everybody, everything.
Back here, over here. You brought up the book Mouse by Art Spiegelman. I was just curious, have you ever met Art Spiegelman, and how similar are your stories to, because he's also wrote the book from your same perspective.
Yeah. I think there is just another book. Getting old is tough. Keep forgetting things. There's another book that's titled In the Shadow of the Holocaust. It's about children of the Holocaust and how they grew up. And I read that book trying to find something about myself. And I swore that this guy followed me around. And he would take notes on stuff that I did, and that my parents did. We all had a pretty similar childhood and growing up experience. I remember a friend of mine who was in a graduate school for social work asked me, what was it like growing up as child of survivor? And my response was, compared to what? What do I know? I only know this. It's very similar. I think all of us who grew up as child of survivors had very similar experiences.
Hi, my name is Cole, and I was wondering, how do you feel about the term Nazi being thrown around as though it doesn't have any significance?
Nazi-based programs? Did I hear that correct?
Sorry, the term, like people use Nazi to like describe others, like how do you feel about people using that as though it doesn't mean anything?
Well, let me think about that a minute. There are Nazis. I mean, the American Nazi Party still exists. There are people who walk around with swastikas or slightly different insignias, but they are about white supremacy, and they're about as close to the Nazis as you get here. And if they had their way, it would be all over again. But just because somebody disagrees with you and, has a different political viewpoint, that doesn't make them a Nazi. And I really don't like using that term because it really means something very different to me and to others.
Hi, my name is Julita Geiger, and I was wondering if you know what it was like in the synagogues after the Holocaust.
Do I know what it was like after the Holocaust?
In the synagogues.
Oh, well, there weren't that many left, number one. They burned a lot of them. But I can only tell you from the experience of my going to the synagogue with my father when I was small, but it was in Pittsburgh, and that synagogue was made up of almost completely Polish survivors of the Holocaust. So, that's where we went. I know that after the war, after my father and mother were liberated, they met in the camp, in the displaced persons camp, by the way. He went all over Europe looking for family survivors, and these are the days before computers, and And he found nothing. Nothing. Not one of them survived. My father funded that trip around Europe with American cigarettes and chocolate bars that he got from the U.S. Army, because currency was worthless. Currency was worthless. Chocolate bars were worth something.
Hi, my name is Natalie Berry, and I had this question, like, have you ever felt like you had to hide your Jewish identity, like, after the Holocaust, because you lived in, like...
Not yet. Not yet. No. I've never made a secret of it, and I've never tried to hide it. It's part of who I am. And my basic philosophy is, what you see is what you get. You don't like it? Keep walking.
Hi, my name is Yolani Aguilar, and you mentioned that you've seen anti-Semitism increase, and same with Asian and Hispanic hate, or that you've seen it easy to be a parent. So since the Holocaust, is there anything that you think has changed for the better in the world? And based on what you've seen, that there is hope for things getting better?
I always have hope, but I'm frequently disappointed. I wish I could expect the worst and then be happy with something not as bad. But I don't think it's gotten any better. I think it's gotten worse. And I don't know how bad it actually can get.
This is, hello? Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Julia. Nice to meet you. This is less of a question, but more of a thank you, because my grandmother is a kid who survived in the Holocaust, and she lost both her parents. And I just was wondering, is there anything I could say to bring some sort of comfort? Because it was just her and her brother who survived. So, like, I don't have my aunts and my uncles from that side. And sometimes I don't really know, like, how to comfort her, because, like, when she talks about these things, it's really hard for her. And I was just wondering if you have any advice on how to comfort her. And thank you for sharing your story, because I appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. That pain is so deep that I don't think you can even approach filling up that hole. I wish there was something you could do.
Hi, my name is Madeline Throne. Thank you for being here. How did other people in the U.S. treat you when you moved, knowing that you were a Holocaust survivor?
As a kid, not very different, because most of the kids in school didn't really know about the Holocaust, even if they were Jewish. That wasn't taught until much later. But later on in college and graduate school, there were people who were curious about things, and I answered it the best I could, but you know, I don't know. It's like I told you, my friend asked me, what was it like growing up as the son of Holocaust survivors? And I said, I don't know. I didn't know anything else. It's like, how was it growing up poor? Well, it was normal for us.
Thank you so much, everybody. We would like to thank Dr. Tannenbaum for coming today, and thank you so much. You've shared so much of yourself with us, and we are so appreciative. So thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Thank you, and we hope you'll come back in the future and grace us with your presence. Thank you again. All right, Ms. Stout, did you have anything you wanted to add?
DSOA would like to take this moment and thank you for taking time out of your busy day. It's nothing like having somebody to come and speak to us. Thank you for caring.
And Ms. Posner? Your insight and your compassion is very obvious to me. And to the young lady who wanted to know what to say to your grandmother, tell her, I learned your life made a difference because the survivor's goal was to live through it, to be able to share it with their children and their grandchildren. They survived for a reason. The next generation is responsible for sharing the lessons, for learning what hate can do, and for making the world a safer place. Your grandmom came here for a reason, to make a life better for herself and for her offspring. And so, if you take nothing else out of this, although I don't know how you could not take so much, take with you the importance of remembering the suffering of those who went before us and the hope that they brought with them as they came to a new land with a new world and new challenges. And they won. Every survivor won the war because he or she lived to tell us and to raise a family, to bring forth those lessons. We should never forget. Never forget. And remember to do the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you for coming today. It is almost officially Friday, so I'm going to have this area right here exit out this door. The rest of the theater will stay seated until I give some directions just so we don't have too much crowding. Thank you, everyone. If I don't see you, have a wonderful week.